Her cousin poured sand in her fabric bag to lose. She did not know the market woman had heard everything. The fabric. Find the good ones she set aside. The Ankara she sourced from ABA. Pull them out. Put in the cheap ones from the roadside. She will not check tonight. She trusts me. She never checks when I am around. The samples she prepared for the judges? Replace them. Use the ones she rejected last week. The ones with the faded edges. The ones she said were not good enough to show anybody. Put them back in the bag. Arrange it exactly like she left it. She cannot win this in front of me. Not in front of everybody. After everything I have done for this girl. After everything. She thinks she can just go and collect an award while I stand there and clap? Let her go and present her rubbish samples to the judges. Let them see she has no quality. Let them send her home. And when she comes back crying, I will be the first one to console her. Adjust bag, zips it closed. Perfect. Just like she left it. The stall owner is not here. The market is almost empty. Nobody saw me come. Nobody saw me do anything. She will not beat me. It is not possible. My people, stay with me. Because this is not a story about fabric. This is a story about what happens when a woman spends years watering a plant that was never going to flower for her. And the day she finally walks away, the garden she planted for herself begins to bloom overnight. And if you have ever loved someone generously only to discover they had been quietly measuring how much of your light they could block without you noticing, like this video before we go any further. It costs you nothing. And it helps this story find the woman sitting somewhere right now wondering why the person who calls themselves her biggest supporter is always the first one to arrive when things go wrong and the last one to arrive when things go right. Subscribe to Farby the Storyteller. And now let me tell you who Adaeze was before I tell you what she survived. Her full name was Adaeze Okonkwo, 27 years old. Igbo woman, born second of 4 children to a tailor father and a fabric trader mother in Nui, Anambra State. She had been touching fabric since before she could read. Her earliest memory, the one that lived deepest and came back most reliably when she needed it, was a sitting beneath her mother's cutting table at age 5, surrounded by bolts of Ankara and lace and osso oak, running her small fingers along the edges of cloth that had not yet become anything and feeling, even then, that she understood something about it that could not be taught. Her mother, Chidinma, had a fabric stall in Nui Main Market that she had run for 22 years. Not the largest stall, not the most visible, but the one that traders from 3 local government areas came to when they wanted something specific that nobody else could find. Chidinma had an eye, a particular, non-transferable, deeply personal gift for identifying quality. The weight of a fabric in the hand, the precision of its print registration, the way it moved when held against light. She had passed this gift to Adaeze the way most important things are passed in families, not in a single lesson, but in 10,000 mornings of proximity, watching, absorbing, learning without knowing she was learning. Adaeze moved to Lagos at 22. She arrived at Jibwa Motor Park with a Ghana Must Go bag, a sewing machine her father had repaired twice before declaring it finally roadworthy, and a folder of designs she had been sketching since secondary school. She did not arrive with a plan so much as a direction, the particular determination of a young woman who has spent her whole life watching her mother build something from the ground up and has decided she would rather fail attempting her own thing than succeed executing someone else's. She found a room in Mushin. She got a job hemming garments at a tailoring shop in Yaba. She sewed on weekends from her room. She sold pieces through a WhatsApp status page she ran under the name Adaeze Stitch, clean photographs, honest pricing, fabric sourced personally from trips to Balaga Market and twice a year from a supplier she had cultivated in ABA who stocked Ankara prints nobody else in Lagos seemed to have found yet. She was not flashy. She did not have the kind of social media personality that turned followers into fans through performance and personality alone. What she had was the work. And the work, every dress, every set, every piece she released, was the kind of work that made women who bought it send photographs of themselves wearing it to people they had not spoken to in months just to have an excuse to show it off. That was what Adaeze was. And she was the kind of cousin who gave everything. That is the part you must understand before the story makes complete sense. Her name was Samachi Obi. Everyone called her Soma. She was Adaeze's first cousin. Their mothers were sisters, and they had grown up in the same compound in Nui, shared the same primary school, worn matching outfits to every Christmas church service from age 3 to age 12 because their grandmother insisted that the family must enter the service as a unit. They had been close, or something that looked like close, for as long as Adaeze could remember. Soma was beautiful in the loud, attention-commanding way of a person who understands that being looked at is its own form of currency. She had studied fashion briefly at a polytechnic in Ogun State before deciding that studying fashion and doing fashion were not the same thing, and that she preferred the doing. She had relocated to Lagos 2 years after Adaeze, and Adaeze, who had by then established her small footing, had helped her. A connection to a fabric supplier. Introduction to a market she had spent a year building trust in. A loan of 12,000 naira that was never repaid and never mentioned again because Adaeze was the kind of person who gave and then forgot she had given rather than hold the weight of it over someone she loved. From the beginning, there was an imbalance. Adaeze drove the van to Balagan and Soma sat in the passenger seat. Adaeze negotiated the price and Soma admired the fabrics. Adaeze stayed up past midnight finishing orders, and Soma rested, because early mornings were difficult for her skin. Adaeze promoted both their work on her page when she had something to share, and Soma occasionally reposted without acknowledgement. The imbalance was visible from the outside. From the inside, it was invisible, because it had always been there, and invisible things that have always been there tend to be mistaken for furniture. They were different from the beginning. Adaeze was the kind of person who called to check on you when you were sick. Soma was the kind who called when she needed to tell you something interesting. Adaeze remembered the small things, Soma's fabric delivery schedule, her difficult client names, the anniversary of the day Soma's father had lost his business, and the months of darkness that followed. Soma remembered what she needed to remember, and forgot what she could afford to forget. But Adaeze had known Soma since they were wearing matching Christmas outfits. And there is a particular blindness that family creates. A loyalty that persists not because it is earned, but because it is blood. Because you have spent so many years telling yourself that a person loves you in their own difficult way, that you have made a home in the gap between the love they show and the love they mean. Adaeze overlooked, and overlooked, and overlooked, until the morning she could not. Adaeze's father died on a Wednesday morning in February. Emmanuel Okonkwo, 61 years old. The tailor with the repaired sewing machine and the quiet pride in a daughter who had taken the family gift to a city he had never been able to fully reach himself. He died of a stroke, fast as strokes often are. One morning he was there. By afternoon he was not. Adaeze received the call from her younger brother Ikenna while she was at Balagan collecting a fabric order. She stood between 2 stalls in the middle of the market and could not move for several minutes, while traders moved around her on both sides, and the market continued its enormous, indifferent noise. She called Soma from the market. The phone rang 4 times. Adaeze, I beg, let me call you back. I'm with a client. Soma. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Soma, my daddy is gone. A pause. Oh, God. Adaeze. I'm so sorry. Let me just finish with this client. I'll call you in an hour. She did not call in an hour. She called the following morning, by which time Adaeze was already on a bus to Nui. Her Ghana must-go bag packed with the specific, functional grief of a person who has had to organize themselves around unbearable news. Soma did not come for the burial. She sent a voice note the morning of the funeral. My sister, I know today is hard. You are strong. Your father was proud of you. I'm praying for you. By the time you come back to Lagos, I'll take you somewhere nice, cheer you up. You know I love you. Adaeze played the voice note sitting in the compound of her father's house in Nui, in her burial clothes, watching her mother move through the preparations with the controlled, terrible dignity of a woman, refusing to let her grief embarrass the occasion. She did not feel anger when she heard the voice note. She felt something quieter, clearer. The particular clarity of a thing that has always been true becoming visible. But grief is not the time for reckoning. Grief is the time for surviving. So she put the phone in her pocket and went to bury her father. She grieved for 2 months. She returned to Lagos. She returned to her sewing machine and her fabric orders and her Adaeze stitch page because work was the place she felt closest to her father, who had given her his hands patience, his eye for quality, his belief that the thing made carefully would outlast the thing made quickly, and proximity to that inheritance was the closest thing to proximity to him. In the 3rd month, Soma called. "Ada, I have been terrible. I know. The voice warm and practiced and remorseful in the particular way that Soma's remorse had always operated. Full and convincing in the moment and difficult to locate afterward. I wanted to come for the burial, and then things it was complicated. You know me, I don't handle these things well. I shut down. I'm sorry. Can I come and see you?" Adaeze held the phone. She thought about her father's voice note. She thought about the Matchbox Christmas outfits in her mother's photograph album. She thought about the specific loneliness of a Lagos evening when you have lost something foundational and the apartment is too quiet and familiar faces are what you have in the place of what you've lost. "Come," she said. Soma came with a bottle of zobo and a bag of puff puff she had bought hot from a woman outside the bus stop, and she sat in Adaeze's small apartment and talked and laughed and made the rooms feel less hollow. And Adaeze, who needed family more than she needed to be right, let it go. She had already let go of so much. She let go of this too. That was her love. Generous beyond its own good. The kind that costs more than it should and gives more than it receives and keeps giving anyway because the alternative, the closed fist, the locked door, felt like a person she did not want to become. It was 3 weeks after Soma's return that the notice came. The Lagos Creative Textile Awards, an annual showcase organized by the Fashion Designers Association of Nigeria recognizing emerging independent designers in fabric sourcing, garment construction, and textile innovation. The awards included a cash prize, a feature in a national fashion publication, and the opportunity that made Adaeze read the email 4 times before she trusted what she was seeing. A 6-month mentorship placement with Ken House, a luxury African textile company with studios in Accra, Nairobi, and London. 6 months. Fully sponsored. In London. She sat on the edge of her bed and called her mother in Nui. "Mama." Her voice was unsteady in the way voices get when joy and grief arrive simultaneously. "Mama, I think Daddy is still sending things." She applied. She submitted a portfolio of 12 pieces, each one documented with photographs of the original fabric, the sourcing process, the construction stages, and the finished garment. It was the most organized, most intentional thing she had ever submitted. She was selected as a finalist. She told Soma that evening, buzzing with something she had not felt since before February. Something clean and alive and pointed forward. "London?" Soma's voice lifted in a way that was almost completely enthusiasm. "Ada, this is huge. I'm so happy for you. I know. Is the application still open? Let me send you the link." And here is the part that reveals who Adaeze was. She did not pause. She did not calculate. She did not think about competition or compare her portfolio to Soma's or consider for even a fraction of a second whether inviting her cousin into this opportunity might reduce her own chances. She sent the link. She said, "Apply. You have the talent. Let the best work win. Your win is my win." She meant it completely. That is what it looks like when a person loves without arithmetic. Soma was selected as a finalist too. And from that day, the jokes began. At first, they were easy to receive. The kind of teasing that passes between family members who have always communicated in the easy currency of laughter. "Ada, when I win this award and travel to London, who will help you carry your fabric bales from Balogun? When you win, very sure of yourself. Am I lying? The judges will see my collection and forget your name is even on the list. Just keep sewing. Don't be making noise." Adaeze laughed. Because that was what you did with Soma. You laughed. But the jokes did not stop. One evening at Adaeze's work table, they had been reviewing samples together, and Adaeze's Ankara set, the centerpiece of her showcase submission, a 3-piece design using the ABA source fabric that she had spent 6 weeks hunting down and 3 weeks constructing, had turned out with a kind of precision and beauty that made even Soma go quiet for a moment. Then Soma said, "Lucky this is not the final submission, because the judges would have given you the award on the spot and sent the rest of us home." Adaeze looked up. I'm joking. Soma waved her hand. But honestly, what if the judges don't even know quality when they see it? What if your fabrics look faded on the day? These things happen. She laughed. Long and bright. Adaeze did not laugh that time. She smoothed the Ankara fabric between her fingers and said quietly, "They won't." There's something the elders say that the modern world has spent considerable effort teaching us to dismiss. They say, when a person tells you who they are in a joke, the joke is the truth. The laughter is just the door they use to leave before you can respond. Adaeze would remember that. Later, at the exact right moment, the showcase was held at Eco Hotel on a Saturday in October. A formal event. Industry professionals, fashion editors, buyers, designers. Each finalist had a display station where their collection would be judged across 3 criteria: fabric quality and sourcing, garment construction, and creative presentation. Adaeze had arranged her station the previous evening during the setup window with the care of a woman who understood that a display is the first conversation her work would have with strangers. Her star Ankara piece, folded and wrapped in tissue. Her fabric samples, each one labeled with its source, the supplier, the specific qualities she had selected it for. Her sourcing journal, a small handwritten book she kept of every fabric hunt, every market visit, every supplier relationship she had built over 5 years in Lagos. She had decided the night before to include it, not because the judges require it, but because her mother had always said, "Show people the work behind the work, and they will understand why the work is what it is." She touched each piece the way her father had touched finished garments in his shop, lightly, with the specific satisfaction of a person who has done what they set out to do. She went home. She slept badly. She woke at 5. She made tea. She sat with the quiet of early morning and spoke to her father the way she had been doing since February. "Daddy, today is the day. I used the ABA fabric, the one from that supplier Mama knew about before I did. I sourced it right. I constructed it right. I didn't cut corners anywhere. You know I don't cut corners." She smiled. "I know you know." She dressed. She took from the back of her wardrobe the fabric she had set aside since March, a piece of her father's tailoring cloth, deep burgundy with a narrow gold border, the remnant of a traditional attire he had made for a client in 2019 and kept the offcut of because he liked the print. She had sewn it into a small pocket square that she tucked into the front pocket of her blazer. She did not know that 4 hours earlier, at 2 in the morning, Soma had slipped into the hotel through a side entrance she had scoped out 3 days before. Soma had gone directly to Adaeze station. She knew exactly what she was looking for. She had been in Adaeze's workspace enough times to know the setup. The fabric samples, the ABA Ankara, the centerpiece of the whole display. She replaced them with pieces from Adaeze's reject pile. The ones Adaeze had specifically set aside months ago as not good enough to show publicly. Faded edges. Loose print registration. The kind of quality that Adaeze would never have submitted. The sourcing journal. She removed it from the display and slid it under the table skirt where it would not be seen. The star Ankara piece, the 3-piece set. She found it in its tissue wrapping and replaced it with an older, unfinished version from a bag Adaeze had brought the previous evening. One that still had basting stitches along the hem. One that was not ready. She worked for 14 minutes. What she did not consider, because people who plan betrayal see only as far as the plan requires, was that the woman in the hotel stall 3 rows from Adaeze station, Ngozi, 63 years old, a fabric trader from Abeokuta, who had been given a complimentary vendor pass by an organizer she knew personally and had arrived the previous evening to set up her own display, had not gone home. Her granddaughter was sick. The hospital was near the hotel. She had arranged to sleep in the vendor preparation area until morning visiting hours rather than travel home and back. She had been awake since 1:30. She had heard footsteps. She had peered through the gap in the partition between the vendor section and the finalist stations, and she had watched, in the dim emergency lighting of the hotel hall, a young woman work through another young woman's display with practiced, unhurried hands. She had not moved. She had not spoken. She had waited. Adaeze arrived at the hotel at 7:15. Mama Ngozi was at her fabric stall when Adaeze walked past. The old woman was arranging her display with the careful hands of someone who has been setting out goods in markets for 40 years, and Adaeze stopped, the way she stopped beside anyone doing quiet, skilled work that deserved acknowledgement. She looked at the old woman's hands, at the precision of the arrangement, at the early morning tiredness in her eyes that came from a night that had not been used for sleeping. "Good morning, Ma. You slept here? Is everything all right?" Mama Ngozi looked up, and Adaeze saw something in the old woman's face that made her go completely still. Not pity. Something older and more serious than pity. The look of a person carrying information that belongs to someone else and deciding, in real time, whether to deliver it. "My daughter." Mama Ngozi set down the fabric she was holding. She looked both ways along the aisle. "Come close. I have something to tell you about last night." Adaeze heard every word. She stood in that aisle, and she heard every single word without interrupting. When Mama Ngozi finished, Adaeze walked directly to her station. She checked the centerpiece first, unfolded the tissue. Her hands recognized immediately what her eyes needed 2 seconds to confirm. Basting stitches. Incomplete hem. The unfinished version. She checked the fabric samples. Her fingers knew these pieces, had handled them, rejected them, set them aside for a reason. These were not her submission samples. She checked beneath the table skirt. Her hand found the sourcing journal immediately. She stood at her station for a long moment. Around her the hall was filling. Lights brightening. Staff moving between rows. Other finalists arriving with the particular nervous energy of people about to be judged. Somewhere across the hall, voices and laughter and the particular sound of a woman performing a mourning she had already decided how it would end. Soma arrived at 7:45. She spotted Adaeze from across the hall and lifted her hand in a wide, open wave. She walked over with both arms opening for the hug. "Ada, today is the day. Let the best designer win." She was smiling with everything she had. "Let the best designer win," Adaeze said, and she hugged her cousin back. Mama Ngozi found Adaeze in the restroom 10 minutes before the judging began. She was direct. "My daughter, what she did to you, she deserves the same back. Let me help you." We go to her station. We take her best fabric. We put in the bad ones. Let the judges see her work the same way they would have seen yours. Let her explain herself. The old woman's eyes were certain. She deserves it. Adaeze looked at her. At this woman who had spent a night she did not need to spend staying awake in a hotel hall, holding someone else's injustice in her hands because she believed it was wrong. This woman who owed her nothing and had given her everything. She let herself think about it. She did not pretend she was above the thought. She imagined Soma's face. The moment the judges examined her best pieces and found them absent. The confusion. The collapse of the morning she had planned so carefully. She imagined it and it felt for exactly 5 seconds like justice. Then she thought about her father, about Emmanuel Okonkwo, in his small tailor shop in Nui, cutting fabric with a precision that was also a form of ethics, who had told her once, when she was 12 and had won a school competition by pointing out a classmate's mistake rather than improving her own work. Adaeze, a true craftsperson, does not win by making others smaller. You win by making your work too large to ignore. She touched the pocket square at her breast. "Thank you, Ma," she said. "Truly. What you did last night, staying, watching, waiting, that is the most important thing anyone has done for me in a long time. But no. She smoothed her blazer. "My father didn't build what he built by cutting corners. And I am not going to become someone who wins by destroying rather than creating. Not today. Not for anyone." She touched the old woman's arm. "But I'm going to make sure the right people know what happened." She went to the head organizer and reported the tampering. Calmly, with the sourcing journal in her hand, the rejected fabric samples as evidence, and Mama Ngozi willing to give her account. She requested replacement samples from her backup bag. She had brought one, because she was her mother's daughter, and her mother had always said, "Carry your backup. The market is unpredictable." And then she went to her station, and she set it up the way it was supposed to be set up, and she presented her work. The judging took 2 hours. The panel moved through the stations methodically, examining, photographing, making notes. When they reached Adaeze station, the lead judge, a woman named Adaeze, 30 years in the Nigerian fashion industry, the kind of presence that made a room straighten itself without being asked, spent 11 minutes at Adaeze's display. She picked up the sourcing journal and read 4 pages. She held the ABA Ankara against the light for a long moment. She said nothing. She moved on. The organizers had, quietly and without announcement, reviewed the security footage from the previous evening. When the awards segment began, the MC did not know what was coming. Neither did most of the room. The head organizer walked to the microphone before the winners were announced and addressed the hall directly. There was a matter of station interference that had been documented and reviewed. A finalist had tampered with another finalist display. The finalist in question was being disqualified per the event's conduct rules, and the matter was being referred to the association's ethics board. He did not name Soma. He did not need to, because the security footage was on the screen behind him. The timestamp reading 2:09 a.m. Soma at Adaeze station. Her hands moving through the display with the confidence of someone who had rehearsed. Her voice picked up by the hall's ambient recording system, saying everything she had thought she was saying only to herself and to an empty room. She cannot win this in front of me. The hall went completely quiet. Adaeze did not look at the screen. She looked at the pocket square in her hand. Then Adaeze walked to the microphone. "The winner of this year's Lagos Creative Textile Award," she said, "and the recipient of the Kent House London Mentorship Placement, is Adaeze Okonkwo. Her sourcing journal alone," she continued, "is one of the most thorough documents of fabric craft and supplier relationship building I have encountered in 30 years. This is a designer who understands that quality begins before the machine is switched on." Adaeze stood. She walked to the front of the room. She received the award with both hands, the way her mother had taught her to receive anything that had been properly earned. Soma was near the exit when Adaeze found her. A handler had brought her water. She was holding the cup with both hands the way people hold things when they have run out of everything else to hold. Her face had come undone in the specific way performances come undone when there is no longer an audience worth performing for. "Ada, let me speak." Adaeze's voice was quiet, not cold. Quiet in the way of a woman who has made peace with every word before she says it. "I have known you since we wore matching Christmas outfits to Ovum Street Church. I have driven you to Balogun and paid for fabric you did not pay me back for. I have promoted your work on my page when mine was the page with the reach. I have given you supplier contacts that took me years to build. When my father died, you sent me a voice note and said you'd take me somewhere nice." Soma flinched. "You came back 2 months later with Zobo and Puff Puff, and I let you in because I was lonely, and you are family, and I confused family with safety." She shook her head. "You are not safe. You have never been safe. I just loved you too much to let myself see it clearly." The room around them was still reconfiguring itself. "You replaced my fabric samples with reject pieces. You hid my sourcing journal. You swapped my centerpiece for an unfinished version. You came in here this morning and you hugged me and said let the best designer win." She let that land. "I will forgive you." Her voice did not waver. "Not today. Not next month. But eventually. Because my father taught me that bitterness is a garment you sew for someone else and then have to wear yourself. I will put it down when I am ready. But us, Soma, this road is closed. I have been overlooking for 15 years and calling it loyalty. What it actually was fear. Fear that if I saw you clearly, I would have to stop. And stopping felt like losing something." She looked at her cousin's face, the face she had known since they were 3 years old in matching outfits. "I see you clearly now. And I am not afraid." She turned. She walked back toward Adaeze and the Kent House representative who was waiting with the full details of the London placement. She did not look back. London in November is gray in a way that has its own kind of beauty once you stop expecting it to be anything else. Adaeze had been warned. She had bought the coats. She had been warned about the coats too, and she had laughed at the warning and discovered on her second week that no coat fully addresses the particular London wind that finds the gap between your collar and your scarf regardless of how carefully you dressed. But the Kent House studio in Shoreditch. The Kent House studio was the kind of space that recalibrates your ambition simply by existing. Fabric archives from 12 African countries. A design library with sourcing documentation going back 40 years. A head mentor named Kwame Asani from Ghana who could identify the origin of a fabric by touch alone and who said on Adaeze's third day, after watching her work for 2 hours without speaking, "You handle fabric like you are having a conversation with it." "My father taught me," Adaeze said. "He said every material has a preference. Your job is to find out what it is." "Your father was right," Kwame said. And he said nothing else for the rest of the morning, which in that studio was the highest form of endorsement. It was in the studio kitchen on the fourth day that Adaeze met Thandai. Thandai Dubé, 25, Zimbabwean, raised in Bulawayo, trained in Johannesburg, placed in the Kent House London program through a parallel mentorship track. She wore her locks pinned up with a pencil she kept forgetting was there. And she talked about textile design the way people talk about something they are genuinely not doing for anyone's approval. She sat beside Adaeze during a materials lecture and passed her a folded note. "Adaeze, open it. I have been trying to source Ghanaian Kent for a collection for 4 months and hitting walls. I think you might be the only person in this building who knows how to actually find fabric." Adaeze looked at her. Thandai looked back with a completely earnest expression of someone making a genuine, unashamed request. Adaeze smiled. The first full, unguarded smile since she had left Lagos. "Tell me what you're looking for," she said. They spent 3 evenings that week in conversation, about sourcing, about supplier relationships, about the difference between buying fabric and understanding it. Thandai taught Adaeze 3 things about Zimbabwean textile heritage that Adaeze had not known. Adaeze showed Thandai her sourcing journal. Thandai read 30 pages without stopping. "This," she said, "is a book. This is an actual book that should be published. Start with making your sourcing work first," Adaeze said. "Then we talk about books." They became the kind of friends who build each other without accounting for it, who share knowledge without calculating what they will receive in return, who celebrate each other's wins with a fullness that has no resentment underneath it because they understand something that jealousy never will, that abundance multiplies when it is shared and diminishes when it is hoarded. Adaeze had spent 15 years offering that kind of friendship to someone who could not receive it without also trying to dismantle it. Now she had found someone who gave it back. That is not a small thing. That is, in fact, everything. She called her mother on a Sunday evening in December. Outside the window of her Shoreditch flat, London was doing what London does in December. Dark by 4, the streets carrying the particular energy of people moving purposefully between warmth and warmth. Her mother, Chidinma, listened while Adaeze spoke. About the studio, about Kwame, about Thandai, about the fabric archive, about the specific, recurring feeling of being in a room that was built for exactly what she had been building toward. When Adaeze finished, her mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Your father used to say, make the work too large to ignore. I think he knew you would find the room large enough for it." They stayed on the phone without talking, in the comfortable quiet that lives only in the places where real love has made itself at home. When Adaeze hung up, she sat by the window and watched the street below. She thought about the morning in October at Eco Hotel, about Mama Ngozi and the courage of a woman who owed her nothing, about the choice she had made in the restroom, not the noble, performed version of the choice, but the real one, the one that cost her something. The one where she had stood with the thought of revenge fully formed and chosen differently not because she was above it, but because she was her father's daughter, and her father had never won by making someone else smaller. She went to the small kitchen of her flat. She put on the kettle. She took from her bag the fabric she had brought from home, the deep burgundy remnant with the narrow gold border, the offcut from her father's shop, and she laid it on the work table. She had been thinking about what to make with it since March. She knew now. She was going to make something that would last. She threaded her needle. She began. Before you go, 3 questions. Because this community does not watch and scroll past. We sit with stories. We carry them. We ask what they mean. 1. When Adaeze let Soma back into her life after the burial voice note, was that grace, or was that a woman who had already been shown exactly who Soma was and chose not to see it? Would you have opened the door a second time? 2. The moment Adaeze chose not to sabotage Soma back, even when Mama Ngozi offered to help, was that integrity, or was the kind of peace that only becomes possible after you have lost something so important that revenge starts to feel small by comparison? 3. And this is the one I want you to hold the longest. Have you ever had someone in your life who was always arriving to console you after disasters they quietly helped arrange? Drop your answer below. We do not judge here. We discuss.